Growing up in a seaside location on the east coast of Australia, one of my favourite things to do as a kid was to wander around the wharves, the dock area in my hometown. One of my favourite things at the wharves was the dry dock. I don't know if you've ever seen a dry dock before, but it's a structure, it's like a ramp structure they'll use to drag boats out of the water in order to do maintenance on the boats. What fascinated me about the dry dock as I watched it as a kid was that you'd see these yachts that when they were out moored in the harbour were the picture of sleek beauty. When they'd get hauled up into the dry dock beneath the waterline, they were anything but sleek or beautiful. And they were covered in this black rough substance that I came to know later on were called barnacles. And barnacles are those crustaceans, those things that stick effortlessly to the bottom of a boat. And over time, of course, the more barnacles that form, if they're not dealt with and sheared away, they slow the boat down enormously. They affect its agility in the water. And you know, the same dynamic unfolds in organisations just as it does in the nautical world. But of course, in organisations or businesses, barnacles don't attach themselves to the business. Those barnacles are things that slow an organisation down over time, are traditions, historical ways of doing things. Sometimes it comes in the form of bureaucracy or red tape. Other times it's just the habitual way things have been done in the past. And you see how this process unfolds. You know, for instance, there's an innovation, a new way of doing things, and we all realise it's a very smart move and it's a really forward-thinking approach. So we go, well, let's take that innovation and standardise it across the organisation. We make sure that everyone's doing things the same way. Then eventually that innovation goes from being just an innovation to best practice. Then add a few years and that best practice becomes so unconscious to us that it becomes habitual process. In fact, some people come into the organisation, new team members, and the first thing they're trained is how to do things in this organisation. They're trained the habitual processes, often not told why we do things the way we do, they're just told this is what we do. Now you add a few more years and suddenly that best practice, which is now habitual process, becomes a sacred cow, so embedded in the organisation that the moment you try to challenge or change that way of doing things, that tradition, people get highly, highly offended. And yet it's so critical that in every organisation, just as you would in the nautical world, that you shear away routinely those things from the past that are holding you back, that are affecting your speed, your agility, your responsiveness to the world around you. Now, there's a big difference, a huge difference between being in a groove and being in a rut. And the reality is, can I challenge you, when you look to deal with traditions, be sensible, be discerning, because not all traditions need to be dispensed with. In fact, I often encourage my clients when they're looking at which traditions and processes from the past to get away from and to leave in the past, to approach it a little bit like you would if you were renovating a house. When renovating a house, if you're going to take out a wall, you want to figure out first if that wall is load-bearing or not. And it's exactly the same when dealing with traditions and practices within organisations. Some traditions and practices are like that load-bearing wall. They are core to the organisation's DNA, its connection with its heritage. When traditions aren't the enemy, they often give us a sense of culture and belonging. However, in many cases, those traditions and ways of doing things aren't a load-bearing wall. They're just something hanging on from the past that needs to be dealt with. So I want to challenge you. What are your traditions? What are the things from your past as an organisation that perhaps were once innovative but now are no longer competitive or appropriate and they're just holding you back? Can I urge you, it may be unpopular, it may be inconvenient, it may be politically challenging, but deal with those traditions for the sake of the organisation and its longevity.